Alright, welcome back to Radio Free Butte Hold, everybody. I am your host, bloodydoves, and today we're going to answer a question that I get a lot. So, a question I get a lot from players of BTA and just people I talk to in general is, bloodydoves, what's your favorite faction in BattleTech, and why? And so today, I've decided we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to give you the definitive answer on who is my favorite faction, and also as a bonus, who's my least favorite faction. So, before we get started though, two notes. First, it's worth noting this is just for preference. I'll actually play any faction on tabletop, so I have no objection picking up whatever faction and playing them as op forward. I don't mind, because I'm there for the gameplay on tabletop. But for today we're going to talk about my two favorites. My favorite and my least favorite. We're going to talk about those guys and just see kind of who I like and who I don't like. Second, don't forget to do like and subscribe and all the YouTube jazz. It really helps with the channel, and I appreciate all the support and need as much of it as I can get. Now, this topic is going to make some people angry. I'm going to have some hot takes here, and I'm expecting to duke it out with y'all in the comments. So, no matter what I say, get down to the comments, leave a comment as to why my faction is the worst faction and your faction is the best faction. The good old internet argument of my faction is good, your faction is bad, and it doesn't really matter what faction it is. It's just that it's mine and yours. That's the way it has always been on the internet, and I look forward to seeing that in the comments. Now, let's get started. So my favorite faction is pre-Schism Comstar. Now, why that faction? And also, what is that faction? Since some of you might not know what I'm talking about. So Comstar in the 3050s, I think it was 3055, or 3053 or something, officially had a schism where part of it broke away and became the Word of Blake. With the Word of Blake, oopsie, that we'll talk about another time. I like Comstar before that break. So realistically, before the mid-3050s. And back to their founding. Why this faction? And it's actually pretty simple. It goes back to my time starting with BattleTech. I learned about BattleTech for the first time from a friend who was telling me about it on a car trip we took from Texas to Ohio. And tell you what, driving a U-Haul at 60 miles an hour from Texas to Ohio in one go, it's miserable. Don't recommend it. It was like 15 hours in a U-Haul. It was a shitty U-Haul. It was terrible. I don't recommend it. But we did it, and we had to talk about something. So I told him about Star Trek and Star Wars, and he told me about BattleTech, and that was what we did. So he got me into BattleTech with that conversation. And then I played a few small games with him and his brother. And then we did a campaign. He decided to run a little campaign, and it was the Battle of Two Kid. Where me and his brother were the players, he was the op 4. And he played, and we played Comstar, and he played the clans. He played Clan Nova Cat. Now, this campaign went really, really well for the players. We kind of absolutely mulched Nova Cat. We beat them so badly that they ran out of bullets, and they actually we got a bonus scenario because we beat them so badly where we got to ambush the Khan and capture him, which did not happen canonically, for the record. That's not a thing that happened canonically. He just added that scenario because it was fun. It was a really great time. It was a great experience. It led to a lot of memes that my playgroup still use, such as Beats by Crab and Gauss Mountain, which are actually the same thing. Well, they stem from the same thing. So in this campaign, the players, me and his brother, had 3 mechs each. We ran one level 2, which Comstar operates in level 2s of 6 mechs, in case you're not aware. We had 3 mechs each. My primary PC was driving a King Crab with 2 Gauss rifles. The King Crab KGC-001, which is my favorite mech ever, actually. It's got 2 Gauss rifles, a large pulse laser, an LM-15, and 2 Streak 2s, which are completely useless, but they're there. So that pilot also had a special pilot ability, SPA, called Sniper. And if you don't know what Sniper does, it halves range penalties on attacks. So our tactic, we also had a couple other Gauss rifles in the force, and we had some ERPPCs and some stuff. We had some other long-range weapons. And so our combat tactic pretty quickly revolved around getting the King Crab and my Gauss Hunchback and the other player's ERPPC Marauder, and putting them on a hill, and then just keeping them on a hill and calling it Gauss Mountain, and just gunning down anything that ran at us. This also turned into where Beats by Crab came from, because that King Crab was a death machine. It's actually kind of not a great mech, but it really worked in that campaign. And I found out later that he gave it to me because he wanted me to have a good starting experience, but he also assumed that I would lose the mech at some point because it's got 2 Gauss rifles, which are explosive. It's got both side horses have ammunition, which is explosive. It does not have case, and it has an XL engine. So he really expected me to lose the mech at some point, but he just could never roll a crit against it. His crits were famously terrible in that campaign. He could never crit anything. The worst damage that King Crab ever suffered was it lost one of the arms. I think it was the right arm, maybe? I don't remember which one. Kind of guessing. But it lost one of the arms, and he couldn't roll the crit on the Gauss rifle, which was fun. That King Crab actually won a solo duel against a clan mech. It was a woodsman, which some of you in the audience might be like, wait, a woodsman? How the hell did the Nova Cats have a woodsman? That's a great question. I still don't really know why they had a woodsman, but they did. And my King Crab actually won a solo duel with it, and frankly should have lost. I shouldn't have won that duel. The woodsman was a better mech than mine, because the woodsman's actually really quite good. But I managed to beat it, and we managed to escape that scenario. It was actually pretty great. It was a great campaign. And so, I'm coming out of this campaign with a strong knowledge of, a strong experience, a really good experience, and an interest in Comstar, this faction I was playing, and so I read up on them. I got some books, and I started reading, and I discovered a lot about Comstar, and the thing I learned about Comstar is that Comstar is surprisingly complicated. The thing that I like the most is I like them for 2 real reasons. One, I like that while they were monsters, like everyone in the Inner Sphere, frankly, they had a plan, which is something that I cannot say for the rest of the Inner Sphere. The 5 great houses are monsters to each other, but they're monsters just kind of in the name of personal power and not in the name of a greater goal. They each just want to be the Lords of the Star League. They don't really want to be something reasonable. They don't have a long-term goal beyond just shoot the guy wearing the wrong color jacket. Davions wear yellow jackets, and Drax wear red jackets, and the Davions shoot the Drax because the Drax aren't wearing yellow jackets. That's really as complicated as they get. And while things like Operation Holy Shroud were horrible, Comstar at least did that with some kind of goal in mind. They had an aim they were trying to reach, which was the preservation of technology and the preservation of human civilization in a way that the great houses just didn't. And I liked that. The other thing I liked about Comstar is, frankly, Tukid. Comstar saved everyone's asses. While the rest of the Inner Sphere was off being a bunch of idiots, fighting each other and tripping over their own feet, Comstar, for selfish reasons, to protect themselves, but ultimately, they did save everyone. They went to Tukid, they took the biggest army available in the Inner Sphere at the time, one of the biggest armies in history other than the Star League, and they got the job done. They took an army that was mostly green, with a lot of people who had never seen real combat. They went up against the most dangerous fighting force in the setting, the clans. And they won. It was brutal, and it was bloody, and they paid. They paid in blood. For every inch of ground they took out, they prevented the clans from taking. They paid with an unbelievable, unimaginable amount of blood. But they did it. And I liked that. I like that there's this faction that when the chips were down, they decided to do what it takes. And they did. And I liked that. The question is, should you like Pre-Schism Comstar? And the answer is, I think so. It's a hard question, of course, and it's really up to you as to what your personal feelings are about Comstar and about factions in general. But I think you should. I think Comstar, and if you don't like Comstar, I think you should read up on them. There's a lot of memes around Comstar. They're the phone company, you gotta pay your phone bill, yada yada, so on and so forth. I think we all know those memes. And I think those memes are very... Well, they're not very good. I don't think those memes are very good, because those memes undersell the actual reality of the faction, which is that the faction is complicated and interesting and has a long, nuanced history. And there's a lot more to them than just being the guys who manage the HPG network. I think you should definitely pick up the old Facet Comstar book. I think you should definitely read that book, because it's a fantastic book. It's one of my very favorites. It's one of my very favorite BattleTech books, and I think it's absolutely worth you reading. I think that Comstar gets a lot less interesting after Shallar Mori and Anastasius Vogt their reforms in the 3050s that schism Comstar into the Word of Blake, who frankly deserve their own episode talking about them, and the oopsie doodle that they decided to get into, because I can't say the actual name of their activity without YouTube getting mad at me. Thanks, YouTube. Appreciate it. I think you should definitely read the Fast of Comstar book. It talks about their history. It talks about Comstar. It talks about the Word of Blake. And I think it's fascinating. It was written before the Blake Toyama retcon, which I think actually kind of was a bad retcon. And so for me, that book remains the definitive source of their history. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the Blake Toyama retcon. So Jerome Blake was the guy who founded Comstar. He was the last Star League Minister of Communications. And he stayed behind from Currency's exodus, and he decided to make Comstar into a thing. To save the HPG network and to save technology, because he easily foresaw that the great houses were going to go to war, and it was going to be a real shit show. And he wanted to save what he could. Konrad Toyama was his protege, a guy he picked up somewhere. I believe Konrad Toyama started life kind of as a con artist, and then sort of saw the light of Blake's mission, and decided to try to save humanity alongside Blake. One thing that's important is, originally, in the old fluff, Jerome Blake wanted the Comstar to be secular. He wanted it to remain about the technology and about the science and about the knowledge. Konrad Toyama did not want that, and Konrad Toyama wanted it to be kind of a mystical pseudo-religion that he would kind of control. So in the old fluff, as Blake was laying ill, dying on his deathbed, he had one last conversation with Konrad Toyama. Toyama went into his bedroom. The cameras were turned. The surveillance equipment was disabled, and they talked. And then Toyama came out sometime later and said, "Jerome Blake has passed away, but as he lay there dying, he gave me a holy mission. He gave me the control of Comstar, and he said that he asked me to turn it into a great faith. And so I will follow his holy mission." Now, the implication here is that they talked. Toyama maybe sort of killed him by smothering him in his bed, and then came out and said, whatever, and everyone just kind of went with it because everybody knew that Toyama and Blake were very close, and if Blake had a secret, he would probably have told Toyama about it. That's what the old fluff was. Now, this was retconned fairly recently to be no longer the case. What it is now is that Blake, at the end of his life, did change his mind and told Toyama to turn Comstar into a religion. And Toyama was the one who didn't want to do it, and Blake had to kind of order him to make it happen, because he was dying, and Toyama would have to carry it out. And then Blake died peacefully in his bed, and Toyama came out and said all the same things and proceeded to do the thing. I don't like this because it makes the origin of Comstar a lot less interesting. I actually like the idea that the mysticism of Comstar was rooted ultimately in a lie that Toyama told to pursue his own personal power. I kind of like the idea that Comstar at its root had a mission that was sort of perverted by someone who did not have good intentions in mind. I kind of like that. I think it's kind of weird and charming. In a, holy shit, this is kind of evil sort of way. I think there's kind of a lot of fun there. There's a lot of nuance to it. And so, that's kind of why I like Comstar. I think Comstar is a complicated faction. They're an interesting faction. And I think they're one that is worth looking into. If all you know about Comstar is that they run the HPGs and they collect the phone bills, then you owe it to yourself to kind of go read up on them and find out that there's a lot more going on and there's a lot more depth to it. And I could talk about Comstar probably for an entire episode, but I'm not going to. Instead, we're going to move on. And we're going to move on to my least favorite faction. Or factions, in this case. And you probably saw it coming. It's the clans. Now, I know I can hear people typing furiously in the comments, and I can hear the people disagreeing from space. Let me explain. I don't dislike the clans because they're uninteresting. They're actually quite fascinating. I don't dislike the clans because, they're they're not, because they exist or because they have overpowered technology. I dislike the clans because people fundamentally don't understand the clans. The clans are fundamentally and deeply misunderstood by most people who play BattleTech now, and even by Catalyst, who I think can't write clans for shit anymore. The clans at their heart are a deeply alien society. They are not relatable to us or the inner sphere. They are a strong caste society with extremely limited social mobility unless you are a super badass, where only hyper-competency matters, and where the caste in charge is so divorced from normal human functioning that they're fucking aliens, okay? The clans are alien to us. And to illustrate this, let me talk you through, if you were, quote-unquote, born into the clans as a warrior, this is how your life would go for the first, 15 to 20 years. First 15 years of your life. You are decanted from an iron womb, you have no family. You are put into a Sibco of other people, of other children who were decanted from iron wombs at about the same time, usually from similar genetic material, though not always. From the age of birth, you are whipped into being the most lethal, unfeeling, brutal warrior it is possible to turn you into. Your youth is spent training, fighting, and fucking your fellow Sibcos, who are your quote-unquote siblings, kind of. And this is not only normal, but it is completely expected, and if you do not excel at this, you are called from the Sibco and either killed during training, or sent off to be a laborer for the rest of your life. It is expected that at the end of your Sibco training, you engage in trials against your fellows, and you kill them in martial combat, usually mech combat, to secure your place as a warrior. A lot of Sibcos only have a couple of people who survive. The idea is that once you are a warrior, you will undergo constant violent trials to retain your position, and even to advance in the clan. You have to fight and kill constantly to prove your value and to prove that you are worthy of being a warrior in the clan. Empathy and sympathy, which are things that in modern society are actually really important and help us keep our humanity, the clans consider these weaknesses and they are beaten out of you constantly. If you show empathy and sympathy for other people, for your enemies, you're considered weak and people will try to take you out of position. All you are is a tool. You are a weapon to be wielded in the name of your clan. And this is something that not only do you understand, but you actually agree with and you want to be the case and you want to participate in. I don't know what part of that people look at and go, yes, this is for me. But if you look at that and you think that that's a good thing, you're a fucking lunatic. Sorry, you are. No. This is not how any human society works at all. Even the most brutal warrior societies in human history still have shit like families, which the clans just don't have. Even the really peaceful, the quote-unquote friendly clans like Clan Ghostbear, who are not actually friendly at all, but whatever, they still undergo similar stuff like this. If you tell me your favorite faction is Clan Jade Falcon, what you're saying is that this is what you're a fan of. You're a fan of the dissolution of family ties, the loss, the stripping away of empathy, the raw brutality of being a clan warrior. That's what you're talking about. If someone says that, oh, my favorite thing about the clans is not the warrior caste, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you want to be a clan laborer? Really? I mean, okay, I guess, but it would be a shitty life too. Everything we know about the other caste and clan society for the majority of clans is they live pretty crappy lives. But okay, sure, I guess. And this isn't even getting into the weirdness of their culture, the strict regimented formality of clan life, the lack of basic conversational conveniences like contractions. The ideas, the new like language terms that Nicholas Kerensky came up with, like AF and QIAF. The idea that in the clan grand council, all the khans wear what we would term basically fursuits and look very weird and unusual and look super goofy. I've also been told the Blood Spirit outfit is really funny looking. I haven't actually seen it though. I couldn't find it on a short notice. Imagine the absurd level of tribalism that the clans experience, where you're a different clan. You're in my same culture, but you're a different subset of my culture. Death to you. You think political tribalism now is bad? They got nothing on clans, man, where they'll just fucking shoot each other. My issue with the clans is not that clans exist. It's not that they're not interesting. It's that people don't fucking understand them. The clans are almost explicitly meant to be antagonists and bad guys, a force to use against players. Their technology is unbalanced on the table because it's meant to be the bad guy. They're meant for you to have to fight uphill against, to be a challenge. Their culture is so alien because it's meant to be a shock to players. When you encounter it, you're like, holy shit, this cannot possibly be how you people are. They're not meant to be heroes. They're not meant to be the stars of the show. This is why I don't like them. Players often look at the clans and see kind of only an idealized version of the clans where they talk about personal honor and they're like, oh, they're great warriors fighting for honor and dignity. And like, no, they're not. The clans, like, clan honor is deeply hypocritical. Much like Star Trek Klingons, the most honorable thing is victory. And like, the clans they're not good people and they're not heroes. They will kill you as soon as look at you if you are in their way or you are part of the clan and you show too much weakness. And weakness is defined as stuff the clan doesn't like. And everyone in their culture just sort of buys into this. If you think that if you joined a clan you would trial into the warriors, you're fucking wrong, pal. Almost certainly you would be a laborer. Almost all of us would be laborers. Only the most die-hard super badasses get to be warriors. And if you are a die-hard super badass, what the fuck are you doing playing BattleTech and listening to this podcast? For real, though. You have better shit to do, probably. I mean, I say probably because, I mean, you gotta relax sometime, I guess. But still, you're almost certainly in clan labor. So would I be. Here's my favorite story about clanners. This tells you everything you need to know about their culture, okay? In XTRO Boondoggles, there's a mech called the Ost Scout 2C. Okay, the Ost Scout 2C is a pretty cool mech. It's actually really fascinating and super hilarious, and I love the record sheet because it is the most crazy record sheet I've ever seen. But the mech itself is not really important. All you need to know is it doesn't have a weapon. It was made by Jade Falcon scientists to help them do scouting against the Inner Sphere. And it doesn't really have a weapon. It has a tag designation laser, which is not a weapon that does damage. It just calls in friendly artillery. Or it designates targets for friendly artillery. It doesn't even call them in itself. The test pilots for the Ost Scout 2C complained about this. They said, well, I have no way to pursue personal glory on the battlefield. This mech is terrible. I don't want to drive it. And so, overhearing this, one of the technicians made a wry comment along the lines of, well, if personal glory is so important to you, why don't you just punch them? The test pilot, hearing this, had to be restrained physically from murdering the man on the spot. If your personal honor demands that you murder a man for making a moderately amusing joke in your presence, your honor is fucked up, okay? That is the perfect encapsulation of clan culture. Personal honor above everything, except when maybe I need to kill a man for being funny. Then, in that case, fuck them. Like, that's clan society. That's clan culture. That's what the clans are. If you think that's okay, if you empathize with that, if you think that that's good, then like you want to reconsider the direction your life is taking. I'm sorry, because that is fucking horrifying, and I don't want to be involved with it, and I don't think you do either. And that's why I don't like the clans. The clans are great bad guys. They're a great foil to the Inner Sphere. They're not heroes, and they're not the stars of the show, and they shouldn't be. And that's why I don't like the old clan era of BattleTech right now. Because it appears to be heavily focused on clan achievement, clan victory. Not entirely. It does talk about the Inner Sphere a bunch, but there's a lot of clan-centric stuff going on in the old clan era, fittingly enough for the name of the era, and I just don't find that interesting. You know, if you disagree, that's fair, you're allowed your own opinion, but I'm not going to like it. And so, that's the conclusion today. The conclusion today can be summed up as this. Yay, Comstar, boo clans, I'm right, you're wrong, your waifu sucks. And that's just how it is. That's how it is on the internet. I look forward to hearing about it in the comments and hearing about why my waifu sucks and why you're right and why I'm wrong, because that's the internet and that's how it's always been. Feel free to get at me in the comments. Let's talk about it. And that's all I got today, folks. Nice and short one. Not too bad. That's been Radio Free Butte Hold. I've been Bloody Doves. Don't forget to do the like and subscribe and YouTube jazz. It really helps with the channel. And until next time, live free, ride hard, and never trust Comstar, Mech Warriors.